Hi, I'm Professor Michele Barbour. Welcome to the Enterprise Sessions. Today I'm talking to Martin Challand, who is CTO and co-founder of Zentraxa. Martin, welcome. Thank you so much for making the time to talk to us.
It's a pleasure.
So let's start with the obvious question. Tell us a bit about your company, Zentraxa.
We are a Spinout company from Bristol University. We founded now just over 5 years ago. We identify as a biotech company, but our mission is to commercialise peptides as materials, and our lead application is an adhesive. Our strategic focus is to work out how you integrate parts of biological manufacturing, bioprocess design, into the manufacturing ecosystem of materials products. And that's where we feel we're most innovative, is trying to bridge that gap.
It certainly is innovative. Perhaps we could just talk a little bit about your technology so that we can then understand better your applications. So tell us a bit about your peptides.
So they're inspired from natural molecules found in a marine context usually. So, they're an obvious choice for adhesives because they bond in wet conditions and salty conditions and dirty conditions. So there's been a lot of interest in these for a number of years, but the challenge to commercialization is how do you manufacture them and exploit that functionality in a useful context. So at the core really of Zentraxa is a kind of platform called Zentide that enables us to develop products into the context that they needed. So it's modifying the natural ingredient into a bio-designed alternative that has performance benefits, but has something we call manufacturability. It's having the process by which you produce that and the eventual formulation that it ends up in. So we do innovation in all three of those areas to bring together in the centre, what we call a viable product.
So tell me, what do you see as the first commercial application of this Zentide technology?
So the application we're focusing on at the moment as our launch application is wound care and ostomy care, where the performance of our ingredient assists bonding in a wet environment for a longer time. So we have that longer wear time for wound dressings or ostomy seals. And also with overcoming the challenge of removal of those devices at the end, so without damaging the patient's skin or causing harm, which can be a real challenge in a surgical context.
Sounds very worthwhile. I can very much understand there's a need for that in the marketplace. So where were you in your own career journey when you first got involved with this technology and with Zentraxa?
So I've been a postdoc at the University of Bristol for just over 4 years and working on something completely different. So I was striving hard to build my own research career in the field of antibiotic resistance and was struggling in the academic context to get my research funded as an early career postdoc, unsuccessfully applied for fellowships and grants through responsive mode. So I needed to find a job. Luckily enough, one became available on an exciting project to develop a new platform for production of difficult peptides. And I felt like I had a set of skills that could add something to the project. And I immediately saw a pathway away from academia, which I realized would probably suit me better. We were working on Zentraxa that had commercial potential, and there was a real opportunity to seize a problem and try and solve for that problem. And then sources to fund that work through Innovate UK, for example, where you addressed a specific challenge and a problem with your idea and were judged on the credibility of that idea alone. And that I felt I had the right skills and approach to tackle that.
I don't know about you, but I sometimes think that what seems like a setback in one's career can actually turn out to be the best thing that could have happened, the opportunity that opens up a new path for you that actually fits you really well. It sounds a little bit like that's what you're describing.
I think so. I think, that's how our careers often unfold, but the skill is when you see that opportunity, you've got to seize it and really take advantage.
And I suppose, again, drawing on my own experience, to seize that opportunity is part of the process, but nobody knows everything they need to know to take this sort of direction. So where did you look for support, and where did you find support? Was it where you looked?
I think as well, Zentraxa had some commercial input from the start. So it started from a project that was funded jointly to the University of Bristol and a commercial partner. So we had a little bit of sort of commercial nous in the fold from day one. As the journey progressed, and it was around working out where to take the technology, that I think the university and the tech transfer office came in and, from my point of view, encouraged me to think bigger. It was around encouraging the founding team, mainly myself, to talk to different customers who might want to use this technology. And we spoke to lots and lots of customers from a variety of different industries and places, from companies that produce antibodies that use only small amounts of peptide, right the way through to chemical multinationals who are asking for thousands of tons per year of raw materials. And in the middle of this were, a niche of potential customers for us that could see the potential benefits of peptides. And we engaged effectively around understanding how Zentraxa could put together a value proposition that aligned to an unmet need that was very real, with a body of evidence around customer interviews that we'd been conducting. And I think the university really encouraged me to follow that track and provided the sort of network and support from mentors that helped me do that, helped me develop the skills you need to do that, and also the contacts. I think that's one thing that a consultant can really bring to the table, is you want one that comes with a large Rolodex with thousands of names in it, and he sends out unsolicited emails saying, I'm involved in this project. It's very exciting. And because they already have that reputation, that rapport, you get a response, and then you get in the room, and that's the bit that makes the difference.
Sometimes for all our technical expertise, it's about those human contacts, isn't it? And those person-to-person interactions. Absolutely. Any young company needs money, and a company that's in the laboratory and making stuff needs all the much more than something that's desk-based. What's the approach you've taken? Have you had public funding? Have you had investments? And how have you gone about that?
The early days, actually, we survived our first year to 18 months without any investment. And that was through public funding. So we, had a lot of success, largely because I think we identified our niche very early on, where innovate funding and other, public funded initiatives could support us. And as we transitioned out of the university, we could manage things in a way that allowed us to run those projects, build up that proof of concept data, and use that to go out and leverage private investment. So we went out for our first fundraise about 18 months into our journey. And, that was successful because we'd done that customer interaction with that market research, and we had a proof of concept that aligned with that. And that gave us a story to tell.
That coherent story of what it is you're trying to achieve and why it should be possible is such an important part of raising funding. But there's also the skills, the techniques. Speaking to investors is not the same as being a researcher and trying to get funding from a research council. How did you develop those skills, and how did you know when you were ready to pitch to investors?
As a wannabe academic, I'd done well into the tens of opportunities where I'd gone to present at conferences. So I was very used to and very comfortable presenting to an audience technically. It is a challenge working out how to engage. It was just practicing and trying to, put yourself in the shoes of the audience and avoid getting too technical, basically. And as well, I think, that I had key people around me, some key consultants, some support from the university that helped add that little bit of gravitas that I think you need as well.
I would be absolutely stunned if every pitch you've ever given to an investor has been successful. There's bound to have been some rejections. Some people make comments that undermine your technology or they don't believe in your story. How do you cope with that? Has that been difficult?
I don't find that as difficult as I did the rejection I got from my grant applications, because I think when it comes to an investor, you're looking to form a relationship. And if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. So if for whatever reason they're uncomfortable about investing, you don't really want them to invest, because that will just lead to a longer term problem. And if you then, you embellish your story to try and get them to change their mind, again, you don't really want that outcome, because you've got this, elephant in the room that there's something you maybe told them that you don't quite believe yourself. It very much is a two-way process, because in our story, we took the very difficult decision very early on to turn down some investment that we didn't feel was right for us at the time. And that was because we were sort of pivoting the business towards the business plan around biomaterials. We had a grant that came with some match investment on a very different business model to take our technology into the pharmaceutical. And we just didn't feel that was right. So it's a very difficult decision. You've just got the company off the ground. You've got your opportunity of your first investment to really get going. And you say, no, I'm not going to have it. And you carry on battling away instead. But, absolutely don't regret that. It was the right thing to do.
It's a brave thing to do, though. To turn down funding is something as academics we don't do lightly. Who made that decision? You talked about being a co-founder. Was it the group of founders? Was there a need to convince one another, or were you all aligned?
I was very determined that was the right thing to do. And I think in general we were. It was difficult. I think there was definitely disagreements, and there was a parting of ways of people that didn't necessarily agree at that moment in time. I guess the story there is if you're the founder, you have to be true to what it is that you feel you want to achieve and do. And that was ultimately what got us through, I think, because we knew it was the right thing to do.
Well, the fact that you're still doing so well now is testament to that. And I understand Zentraxa are a member of Set Squared. Tell me a bit more about what you get out of that.
My colleague Harriet Bray, she's benefited a great deal from the entrepreneur in residence sessions, where you get in front of someone who's been there and seen it before, and that's invaluable. The other thing is the business review panel that we both engage with, and it's much the same. Is you get to sort of fire questions you're thinking about the future to those that have been through the path you're about to tread, and that's just critical to hear that perspective and help you hone your priorities.
Yeah, that community is so important, isn't it? Yeah. Your role as the Chief Technology Officer, tell me a bit more about what you do.
Mostly I sort of manage and direct our R&D effort, and that's pulling together different strands of R&D, very interdisciplinary what we do. We have bioprocess and materials and formulation, so it's trying to get those two activities working in lockstep with one another and making sure that that's essentially building a pipeline of intellectual property that's essentially the bedrock of our company. And again, talking business to business so that our R&D priorities are aligned with what the customer wants. So it's good you've asked me that, because I did want to talk about the role of CTO, and I guess debunk the myth that the lead scientist, the CTO or CSO, cannot be a leader of the business. We've never had formally a full-time chief executive officer, and that's a model that's worked for us, because it's allowed me to not have to do that role fulsomely and focus on the science and on the technology. And for a company that would call itself deep tech, where the IP and the R&D you do is fundamental to your success, that's essential. And it's something we decided was a skill set we couldn't replace. We couldn't find someone else to do that. And as a CTO, I was able to be the figurehead who went out and pitched for investment and got that commitment. But that's when the university and the tech transfer office and the senior tech transfer officer really helped and got involved, making sure due diligence and governance was all in place and legals were taken care of. Without that, we wouldn't have succeeded.
I mean, you span out the university 5 years ago, and a lot has happened since then. If you could go back in time and speak to Martin 5 years ago, what's the one piece of advice you'd give yourself, knowing now what you do?
I think the one thing that was overlooked that I would like to change was the people side, how you identify those people and how you then get the best out of them. That's something that, if I had my time again, I would put more emphasis on building some of the skills earlier that I could use to achieve that. And I think that's something that is a very important lesson. And when you try and train wannabe entrepreneurs on the journey, talk about be a good business person and learn about cash flow forecasts and term sheets. I think the human element sometimes overlooked, but that's what actually is going to derive you the value and the return on any investment you get.
Martin, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. I'm really sure that everything you shared with us, all your experiences, will be useful and inspirational to academics and researchers considering their own enterprise journey. So thank you so much.
I hope so too. It's been a real pleasure.
If something we've talked about today has piqued your interest and might be relevant to your research, please feel free to contact us and enjoy the rest of the enterprise sessions.